Welcome to today's webinar. I'd like to thank the alumni community for taking time at the beginning of your week to listen in. And of course, I'd like to thank Her Excellency Minister Rania Al-Mashat for giving us her time today. Her topic today is Agile Governance for a Creative Economy 4.0. I know it will be a very exciting discussion. And it is my great pleasure to introduce our president of AUC, Frank Ricciardoni.
Thank you very much, Lori. Thank you, Your Excellency, Dr. Rania Al-Mashat, Minister of International Cooperation and Egypt's governor at the World Bank. Both of you AUC alumni. I should thank also our Director of Alumni Affairs, Raymond Rayev, who brought us all together and produced and directed this program this afternoon. Welcome to all of our students, alumni, and members of the AUC community for another in the series of our alumni chats. We're very, very proud of AUC's impact in the world, and that impact is through our alumni, of which we have two who are leading today's discussion. We've all had to roll with this technology, and this pandemic has accelerated a lot of trends that were underway anyway. It is exactly one of those trends in the agility of management, the agility of governance that we've had to experience in as AUC over this past year. And of course, if you're the government of a nation, as the minister is a part of, you've had to be very agile as well. So it'll be fascinating to hear Minister Al-Mashat tell us how the government has been rolling with this and the outlook on further agility in serving the people of this great country, as we've had to be agile in serving our students, faculty, and staff. It's really been quite a disruptive force, as we all know. There's more yet to come, but disruption releases creativity. And that's one of the things we stand behind here at AUC, the 4 C's of critical thinking, great questions rather than pat answers, creativity, collaboration, and communication. So that's really what we're about here. We thank all for joining. Lori Fitch will be introducing the minister. I want to take just 1 minute to mention why we're so proud to have Lori Fitch with us today. She is not only an alumna, one of those Americans who comes to Egypt and is smitten by Egypt, having had a few Egyptian friends before coming. She is an American who I discovered comes to Egypt every year purely for love of it and for love of her Egyptian friends. And then we were able to recruit her to our board because that's the kind of American we like to have, ones who understand this country, see its importance, its dynamism, and wish to participate in the national life one way or another through this great university. I want to also reassure some of our students who often fret about their majors and how they're going to get a start in life. Lori Fitch got her degree, her undergraduate degree in Arabic, of all things, from the other American university, the one in Washington, D.C., got her Georgetown, her master's degree at Georgetown School of Foreign Service, so might well have turned out to have been a colleague of mine in a previous life. But she stayed on to help there as the chair of the university's Center for Contemporary Arab Studies. So her experience here at AUC really set her on her life course, I think, as an American who gets the Arab world, loves the Arab world, and remains fascinated by the Arab world, which is what AUC is about. It's not only opening the world to Egyptian students, but bringing the world to discover Egypt, as both Lori and I have had the privilege to do. I mentioned her degree in Arabic because she's gone on to be a very successful businesswoman of world stature. So just because you get a degree in one of the humanities, a foreign language or political science or anything else, doesn't mean you are forbidden from entering the world of big league world of asset management, investment banking, strategic advising. Those are all the things that Lori Fitch now does, and we're delighted to have her as one of our trustees of the American University in Cairo. So with that, I will leave it to our two very distinguished alumni to conduct this conversation on the exciting world we're living in right now and how Egypt is bringing agile governance to the Middle East. Laurie, if you'd like to begin the conversation with the minister.
Well, thanks, Frank, first of all, for that very generous introduction. It's really an honor to, first of all, have attended AUC, of course, 30 years ago, and also to be a trustee. But it's an even bigger honor to have been asked to moderate this discussion today. And I cannot imagine that our speaker needs an introduction to this audience. Her Excellency, Minister Al-Mashat, is of course one of AUC's most famous alumna. She is also a former economics professor at the university. She has had a varied career in public service, in monetary policy. She also has experience in the private sector and in higher ed. And of course, you know her as your current Minister of International Cooperation, your governor at the World Bank, and as your extraordinarily successful former tourism minister. If I may add just one more thing, the minister and I do not know each other, but in preparing for this, I spent quite some time researching her speeches and interviews, and with every speech and interview and piece of writing I reviewed, I found her more and more compelling. Her topic today will cover the role of government as a facilitator. And with that, I would be very honored to turn the floor over to Her Excellency Minister Al-Mashat.
Thank you so much, Laurie, for wonderful introduction. President Riccardoni for inviting me to this series. And one thing that you can add in the introduction always is that I'm a very proud AUCian. This morning I was on the Greek campus. We were taking a picture for all the women who work in the Ministry of International Cooperation to celebrate International Women's Day tomorrow. And so I say to all the women out there, happy International Women's Day. And one of the very striking things at AUC on the Greek campus is the library. It's an icon for the old campus. And as I was walking through the library, when we talk about technology today and agile governance, I remember being in the library looking at documents where I had to find the book in the shelf. Today, technology allows us to read the books from our phone. This was not an option when I was an undergrad. So the amount of change that is taking place, the amount of change on technology that is able to push us all forward is quite monumental. And the topic today is a very compelling topic as well. When we say agile governance for a creative economy 4.0, and when we think about the concept of creative economy, it becomes very important because we're comparing it to a rent economy. And today, as governments and countries are becoming more and more interconnected, this whole concept of how you are encouraging creativity to be able to push some of the space of entrepreneurship and startups and so forth becomes more and more important. 2020 was not an easy year for any type of whether it's a policymaker, a business, a firm, an individual. Each one of us was challenged in very, very different ways. But I think the ability to cooperate, coordinate, and actually try to come up with solutions was something which showed how agile everybody really is. And I was once asked, as a policymaker, what it was in 2020. And my answer was, as a policymaker, you don't have time to really panic. You don't need to be optimistic or pessimistic. You just have to take action. And when I'm thinking about agile governance, I want to put it a little bit in perspective to sort of leave people with four very important, in my view, elements which create a launch pad to be able to move things forward. One of them, the first one is to have alignment. And whether I was Minister of Tourism or here as Minister of International Cooperation, taking over at a time when the pandemic was just starting, you have to align people in your ministry, you have to align your stakeholders around a common vision. That is extremely, extremely important. And this alignment around a vision pushes the creativity in a certain way. So whether when in any post that you take, being very clear about the vision, communicating it clearly is something which is extremely important. Second, once you do that, you are able to set expectations. And setting expectations is an extremely important element when we're talking about agile governance. The third important point is to be transparent. So when you have a vision, you have alignment, you're transparent with your message, you have a metric by which you are able to communicate how you arrive at fulfilling that vision are extremely important. And then you're able to fulfill it in practice, not just in documentation. I think those are four very important elements when we're talking about agile governance. And if I take those four elements and I show how I've been able as a policymaker, whether Ministry of Tourism or today as Ministry of International Cooperation, to basically follow that framework, that is what has been quite the backbone of being able to achieve results in both portfolios. For example, our annual report this year, the title is Writing the Future in a Changing Global Dynamic. And that is precisely what agility means. It means that you are trying to take the circumstances around and try and not be defeated by them or just look at them as challenges, but really as opportunities to walk through these fundamental changes and tap on everyone's potential. So also for people to be able to be creative and add to the institution or add to the vision, it is very important to keep that space. And that is one thing I'm sure in the Q&A will come up, how that is done. But for instance, if I go at the beginning of 2020, how did we use that framework of alignment, expectations, transparency, and show things in practice, not just documentation? For the Ministry of International Cooperation, this all came under the word economic diplomacy. Economic diplomacy is what we do as a ministry. It has principles. We try to practice those principles, talk about them, make sure that they are close to our stakeholders, they are well articulated, and through that, and through those principles, we were able in 2020 to secure development financing for Egypt of $10 billion, which is a very tough year when it comes to the space of financing. So this all put together really are some of the the background that I want to lay out when we are talking about agile governance. Technology has played a tremendous role. I think that before the pandemic, there was a fear of technology, that it will displace people, there will be no jobs. But I feel that the pandemic came to show that there is a great opportunity for technology to actually help people, provided that we try and bridge the digital gap, if you will. So those are the few words that I want to start with, and I'm sure, Laura, you will be able to push me further. But again, I say articulating a vision, creating alignment around it, setting expectations properly, so don't overpromise, being transparent and communicate very well, and always walk the talk, i.e. You do all of this in practice, not just document it. Even though I am a very diligent documenter, I document everything because I feel it's very important to leave this for anyone who is either a student who wants to learn or for whomever comes to office afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a lot of food for thought. And I know we mentioned earlier, of course, to please submit your questions in the Q&A. I see there are some already. I'm going to start with a few questions, and then, of course, I will go to the audience questions. So please keep those coming. Well, my first question is around agility, the concept of agility, which of course is in your title, and you just spoke quite eloquently about. I found it interesting that you, in your life, I mean, there's sort of well-known shifts in your career from the IMF, for example, back to Egypt and public service, whether it be the central bank, obviously from the tourism to the tourism ministry, and now to your current ministry. I also learned that you started out at AUC as a computer science major and you switched to economics 2 years in. I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about how you weather these shifts, and if it's sort of a muscle memory to be built up. And then also, once you do know and are experiencing a shift, how do you prioritize your time early on?
I think, and I have many, and thank you for following my talks and my writings and so forth, but there's always sort of a compass that guides us. So there's one thing in there that really creates that passion. And for me, it was always public policy. So whether it was at the IMF doing public policy, the central bank doing public policy, Ministry of Tourism, or now, it's always how do you use your different skills to be able to create a public good. And that public service is a public good to some extent. And in each and once you have that definition, what is a public good? What is public policy? In any post or any position that you take, you try and put together all the elements in a meaningful framework that in order to arrive at that public service or that public good. So for instance, when I took over tourism, the first thing I wanted to do, put a vision. What is it that I want to achieve? Where do I want, what is the public service going to be in this portfolio? And so what is the vision? What is that? And then once you have that vision, how do you create a policy framework where you have objectives and you have tools to achieve those objectives? So that's very, very important. Similarly, if I was the sub-governor of the central bank for monetary policy, what is that policy framework? Similarly, for international cooperation. So I feel that at each and every position, the agility comes from the fact that there is a clear framework in my mind, and then you try and take the variables around you to be able to achieve a vision. And as I mentioned, alignment with your stakeholders, and stakeholders include your team, include your colleagues, include everybody that you have to work with, whether they're private sector, other government, or other governments, if you will. So I think that clarity of vision is something which is extremely important, and it would be a common denominator depending on the portfolio that you are responsible for.
Great. One of the threads from that is the role of government, and also the role the government is actually entrusted with the responsibility to safeguard and to make better lives for its citizens. And one of the concepts that comes over and over in your ministry's literature is this concept of people, projects, and purpose. And I find it interesting because in the corporate world, maybe in the accounting world, actually, there's a theme called or a concept called the triple bottom line, which is people, planet, prosperity, or people, planet, profits. And I find it interesting because it's quite difficult to measure. I'm just wondering how do you measure success in that that sort of triple bottom line concept as it pertains to government, and especially in Egypt, where there's such a large informal economy.
Yeah. So let me just give a little bit of background on the people and projects and purpose. Where did it come from and where we want to take it? And I will answer your question about the measurable. How measurable is it? So as when I took over this ministry, I discovered that there are so many development projects that are taking place that I did not know about when I was in cabinet as a minister of tourism, and the world doesn't know about. And so as part of our economic diplomacy, we had to show that the cooperation that we are doing with the world, because many of these projects are with development partners, be them World Bank, EBRD, or bilaterals or African Development Bank. So it's a whole constellation of multilateralism that we are working hand in hand to basically execute projects which have impact on people. And when you look at each and every project, it actually has a purpose. And so as part of our, one of the principles of economic diplomacy is global partnerships narrative. How do we tell Egypt's cooperation with the world in a streamlined, i.e. an aligned, transparent way? And this is where people and projects and purpose came in. Of course, planet, people and profit also exist. And if we take a look at the UN, when we take a look at many of the SDGs, they are either for the planet or for the people. I think the word profit now has been a little bit tweaked to be purpose, because even profit has to be for purpose, if you will, in the sense that ESG now comes into the works of firms, and that it becomes a priority, that everything that's being done is very mindful to the planet and very mindful to the people. So I don't think they are divorced from one another, the people and projects and purpose. I think they're very much aligned with the people and planet and so forth. And the point that we were trying to make is that for each and every project, and we have 377 projects currently with international partners that are across different sectors, how can we tell that story in a human way? So that's where the people come in. How many beneficiaries are they? Men, women? Is it health? Is it education? Is it clean water? Is it sanitation? Is it electricity? Is it gas to natural gas to houses? So all of these are extremely important projects that are not just done by the government, but they're also done by the private sector or a partnership between both. And then we are 9 years away from 2030. So which SDG are they meeting? So that is where this came out. And we also have the responsibility as a ministry to do the monitoring of the projects. And that's why in our annual report this year, we were showing that there's governance around not just starting a project with the ministry and an international partner, but also seeing it through and also monitoring it across its life.
Great, you're right. I mean, 9 years until 2030 isn't very long. And I will also say that you have a huge fan club that is fast typing in questions. So in the interest of time also, I'm going to start asking them and posing them to you, if that's okay. Great. The first one is, it says, I'm very familiar with agility in the realm of digital and in management practices, less so with agile governance. So if you could please elaborate on what agile governance means in practice.
Yeah. So, I'm going to use, for those who are economists who are listening to us or joining in, there's a very important term in economics called time consistency, right? For a policymaker to be judged as doing sound policy, they have to be time consistent. What does time consistency mean? It means that you do not change your policy action unless you have new information. So you update your information set every period, and then you either continue the course of your policy or you adjust. I think agility, if I'm going to put it in a theoretical context, it's exactly that I in order to maintain my credibility as a policymaker, I should not be changing my course of action unless I have new information, but I should have the flexibility to be able to change my course of action. And good governance means I need to transparently communicate it to my stakeholders. So that's how I would sort of define it, and that's what I do in practice. So everything that I've learned in school and every model that I've written down, I actually do implement it in practice, and I'm very adamant of putting these definitions, and always when I'm in discussions go back to the definitions, because sometimes there is this illusion, and sorry for using that word, that theory is one thing and practice is another thing. And what I have learned and seen and actually in action been able to experience is that our behavior is really fundamentally defined by work of theory and so forth. So if the short answer to the question is, agile governance means that you are able to change the course of action depending on new information, but very important, always remember, be transparent, create the alignment so that all stakeholders understand where you are going next.
Great. Well, the next question is maybe even a little bit more practical. It's quite interesting. The question is, how do you find balance between realism and ambition in your work? And when do you push the envelope?
Okay, I think that the ambition or the ambition that exists actually is the tool or the silver lining in the reality. So sometimes the reality is not easy, it's not straightforward, it's non-linear, but it is because you have that passion or ambition that you are able to use your skills in an agile way to fulfill an outcome. So, and again, today I had a quote that I put on my account. It said, do not let the noise derail you, stay the course. And I can tell you, as a policymaker, every day there is so much noise, and the pandemic has created so much noise for all of us. Noise because circumstances have changed, external environment has changed, colleagues and people around you are going through personal and professional issues, which also dictates new realities. So just let's stay on course and always remember the vision. But just I just conclude on one thing on that, and I've done a lot of modules on leadership, and the first thing in leadership is always set the intention. What is it that you want? Second is stay authentic, and that is what I try to do and encourage everyone around me to do. And then finally, be present in every moment. So those are three very important things. Setting the intention, so that goes to the, if you will, the ambition, or how the question was framed. Stay authentic, be yourself, okay, and be present in every moment. Face those realities and try and see how agile you are in maneuvering to be able to reach an outcome.
That's maybe a nice segue to another question that's that I'm sure everyone has to deal with. Certainly you. How do you deal with criticism as a policymaker?
I think that discussions for people around you are extremely important. I have mentors who I ask when I have questions. I think I've been a little bit spoiled, if you will, because usually the feedback I get is quite positive. But I do solicit feedback, and when I hear something that needs to be fixed, I try and I do an effort in fixing it. And when I see things that are not working well, I take a stand and see how we can create a process again, or a governance structure to ensure a good outcome.
Great. I'm going to just keep checking through because they literally keep coming. Again, very popular. This question starts by saying that one thing I admire is that you effectively position your work in a way that complements yet advances the wider agenda. Have there been opportunities where you can share experiences with other ministries, and have they been receptive?
No, I don't understand the question. I mean, the last part about the ministries, I mean, for example, in our work, because international cooperation is about projects with line ministries. So in showing our work, we are actually showing the work of other ministries, because if there's a project on education, we are not the ministry that designs that project, but we are the ministry that negotiates with the international partner on behalf of the ministry. So I think that in this portfolio per se, everything that we are trying to showcase is really showcasing Egypt's sector story. And sector story involves other ministries for sure. I don't know if I understood the question correctly, but that's...
Well, I am not sure either, to be honest. But I suppose they will follow up if that didn't answer it. One of the other questions is, it says social impact and development are becoming popular career paths, and cooperating with the government is a big part of it. In the spirit of economic agility, how can communication between such entities, and I guess that's government development, such entities in the government become more efficient?
Okay, so you know, one big lesson from the pandemic is that no one is in this alone, and the answer to it is not a government answer, is not a private sector answer, is not a civil society answer. It's all of us together. These might have been principles that, you know, were talked about before, but I think they've become more crystallized and more to the forefront after the pandemic. One of the very important concepts that we have embraced and we talk about is stakeholder capitalism. That is where the government, the business or the private sector, civil society, and international community come together to meet certain principles. What are these principles? Have an inclusive, economy. Let's look at the fourth industrial revolution. Let's look at, the climate agenda and a few others. And I think that, the question is very well put and very well placed. And I want whomever asked that question to please come and visit the ministry's website and our social media accounts, because there our vision really is to create that collaboration between the government, the private sector, civil society, and the international community. That is what has happened through our different projects. And we are even pushing it further in 2021. We've actually labeled this year as the year of private sector engagement, and starting the second half of March, there is more being rolled out, and it will be more clear within within our local space and internationally what are these efforts. But it is no longer mutually exclusive, this versus that. It's everyone in it, even when it comes to finance. And Lori, you are our a boss on this. Blended finance is one very big concept which is coming out, and that is development finance from international community with private sector that basically puts the planet and people at the core. So these are principles today which are no longer foreign or just in books, but I think that the pandemic has made everyone more aware of the urgency of the matter, and it's for policymakers to be more inviting to be in that space, and that's something that we're trying to push in the ministry.
Yeah, well, I could say that it's been a long time coming, but I think finally the financial community, at least, and the corporate world is waking up to the fact that having people and the planet as a core is actually also very good for business, yes. As it turns out. And in fact, increasingly fundamental to business success, which is something that's quite rewarding after so many years. I'm going to combine two questions, which are about the the Sustainable Development Goals. One is, how do you deal with the pressure of a looming target? 2030. It's actually quite close for such such ambitious goals. And the other question is, how close is Egypt to reaching those by 2030?
Okay, so the portfolio of the Ministry of International Cooperation is $25 billion. Okay, how much is being spent on SDGs from a budget perspective is much bigger than that. But what we do here in the ministry is the 25 billion, the 377 projects. This is before 2020. And then in 2020, we added more projects of the amount of 10 billion. So those are the ones that we are trying to map to the SDGs. And very soon we'll be releasing this, but Egypt will be the first country to map its ODA financing, official development assistance or development financing, to the SDGs. And this is extremely important because there have been different methodologies presented in this constellation of SDGs, but no one has basically put it all together. So we're very happy that we've done this, and we'll be announcing it and coming out with it once it's finalized. But what I want to say is that the the financing of SDGs, that the Ministry of International Cooperation or ODA financing, is part of the financing of SDGs, and that's the one that we have done an effort in mapping, and it's quantifiable. It's done collaboratively with our development partners, and even though these are projects that were maybe since 2016 and 2015, and the documents don't have explicitly the SDGs, but through a lot of communication and articulation of what the project is about, we are able to map to the different SDGs. So this is work that we're very proud of. We're going to announce at the at the right moment, and we want to create peer-to-peer knowledge exchange with other countries, because ODA financing is a very important type of financing, and it's not just about the money. And I always say this. It's also the commitment of any government to the standards of governance, transparency, and environmental standards that are dictated or that exists in the partner institution that we are cooperating with for a certain project.
Interesting. I'm going to switch it up a little bit. I told you ahead of time that I would ask you a series of rapid fire questions just to have a little fun. And to each of these, I'd like to ask you if you think they are overrated or underrated. And in this case, the best type of answer is usually just one word, although please feel free to elaborate as you feel necessary. The first question is a concept, overrated or underrated: in-person meetings.
In-person meetings. No, I enjoy them, so I'll say they're underrated.
Great. Well, we all look forward to getting back to those.
Exactly. I miss them so much.
Although this is quite nice to be able to do.
Yes.
Okay, the second question, because I want to have a little fun with you, is functioning traffic lights. The value of functioning traffic lights.
Priceless.
Okay, maybe you can add those to your ministry. Okay, this one is for me. I have a very clear answer on this one, and I'm guessing most Egyptians do. Overrated or underrated? Fasikh.
Fasikh, I love fasikh. I do not eat ringa. I only eat fasikh. So I'm a fasikh junkie, if you will. So no, it's I don't know. That would be it's underrated, not overrated. I want everyone to engage And April is coming up, so I look forward to that festivity.
Yes. Well, another way to ask it would have been Fasik versus Ringa. So now we know your answer.
No, I'm not an Inga person. I'm a Fasik person. It might be a surprise for many people watching us, but there you go.
Surprise for me. That's for sure. Okay, the next one, overrated or underrated? Sahel.
Oh, Sahel. When I was Minister of Tourism, Sahel is one of the places that the world doesn't know about. Our tourism has always been the Red Sea, Hurghada, of course, Sharm el-Sheikh, and their fantastic landmarks. But what's happening in Sahel and it is just unparalleled in terms of water and sand. So those are some of the most enjoyable days of the year that I have there. And I one small giveaway, I enjoy swimming the most with my father. So we have so many memories of, and I look for the day that we go and swim with each other in the sea in the Mediterranean. So I invite everyone to take their parents and hopefully this summer be able to swim in the Mediterranean.
Well, I've just personally been lucky enough to go to Sahel for the last, I don't know, almost 10 summers, only because I have friends there. The rest of the world doesn't know about it because there's no place to stay until very recently.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the whole concept of developing Sahel was basically to be able to engage, to invite tourists there as well. And I hope everyone gets a chance to enjoy that.
Well, I applaud that because they are, even for me, the best beaches in the world, hands down. Okay, the last question, overrated or underrated, and I hope this is, a shoe-in question. AUC.
Oh, there's a slogan when I was a Minister of Tourism that said, Egypt, where it all begins. And I remember I gave the speech, the commencement speech 2 years ago at AUC, and I said, AUC, where it all begins. So it is one of the, truly a lot of what shaped the way I am today was at AUC. Whether it's with professors, colleagues, the extracurricular activity, the platform, the library, the elections, student union elections, the trips, the ability and the agility to change majors 3 times, computer science, business, and then economics, is remarkable. So I think that AUC as an academic institution, as an institution that builds character, is one that is extremely unique. And I definitely, as I mentioned early, and when I first started, I'm a very proud AUCian.
Well, we are so proud of you, of course. And I can only tell you that my WhatsApp is blowing up right now with people typing Fasik into it. Many compatriots there. Great. Okay, well, we can switch back to some questions. There's a queue of 22 of them, including many requests for jobs, by the way, so we're gonna skip those. I like this question. In your opinion, what's the biggest challenge awaiting the international community in the post-COVID era?
Oh,
not easy.
I think one key challenge is going to be a trade war, but over the internet or over communication. I think that's one that is yet to play out in a very clear way, and that is one big geopolitical issue. Other issues are going to be, and this is unemployment rates globally have, of course, come up because there are some industries that disappeared for some time. So the ability to resume that beyond stimulus packages is very important. And that is something that everybody has to think about. But I think that I believe that a key issue that came up at the beginning of the pandemic, whether multilateralism was gone and everyone from themselves, I think that has more or less been resolved to some extent, because there is no substitute to multilateralism, and everybody has to be there and everybody has to be engaged. So that is there was a reconfirmation or an affirmation of that principle, and I'm very happy that on that topic it has been sort of, I would say, sort of concluded, if you will.
Interesting. And just, in that spirit of international cooperation, another question is, what is the secret to successful negotiating, or the secret of a successful negotiator? And how are you able to lead change, in spite of what this person called old school mentalities?
I mean, I don't want to go through game theory and negotiation, but I think a very, a shorthand would be clear about what you're negotiating over. Because sometimes you go into negotiations and then you end up with something completely different. So be very clear, what is it that you want, and of course there are, is it a chicken's game, is it a prisoner's dilemma, is it this or that? These are very different terms. How do I old school versus new school and so forth? Well, first I want to say that I'm very humbled that the leadership has bet on me twice. So this means that acceptance of competency is there, acceptance of change is there, and I've written about this, and I have it said it in many speeches, that to be able to create impact or change, or as you mentioned, the realism that exists, how do you go through it? And I always say there's the 4 C's of success. I know the president mentioned a few C's, but my 4 C's are competence, connections, confidence, and charm. And I've used those 4 at different levels of my career. When I was leaving the IMF to come to Egypt the first time, when I was at the central bank, when I went back to the IMF, when I was Minister of Tourism and now Minister of International Cooperation, those principles have not failed me. On the contrary, they have been extremely useful. And I just want to tell everyone that you start with the competence. And given that the world changes so much, the amount of learning that I have to do on a daily basis is extremely, is there. Discussions with the team, who in many cases are younger, have fresher look, etc., is extremely important. I always tell my team that our colleagues are also abroad; they're not just local, and having that exposure is extremely important as well. So these are important tools that help you, move forward. I don't want to say old school versus new school. It's just moving forward, because the world is dynamic and it changes every day.
Right. Well, I mean, getting back to your point about, alignment around a common vision, old school, new school, you're right. It's not necessarily that clear. I mean, you're absolutely right about being clear about what you're negotiating as being the most important thing. Another thing that I found very useful and fundamental in my own life is to take catastrophic risk off the table. And leave space to negotiate around everything but that. Yeah. I love this question that's on the chat, and there's so many questions that we'll never get to all of them, by the way, but thank you for all of them. It is, how do you cascade your vision to the people who work with you?
Okay.
And how do you make sure that they're committed?
What's very, okay, so first, you spend a lot of time articulating it to yourself. And how do you reach to the vision? It's by analyzing each and every piece of information around you, right? So when I was thrown into the Ministry of Tourism, which I had no clue about at all, and I was given a list of problems, what was extremely important is to sit down, understand and analyze all of this, and then try and come out with 3 sentences which explain the vision. Similarly, for the Ministry of International Cooperation, so much going around, so much happening, a mandate, partners, government, projects, financing, etc. How do you collate all of that into 3 sentences? So I think the most important thing before you ask others to endorse your vision and align around it is to have done your own homework in putting it together. Once you've put it together, every action that you do has to be benchmarked against or referenced against that vision. So then there's a structure. There's nothing that we do today that we cannot pull back to the vision of the Ministry of International Cooperation. There's not a single event that we attend. There's not a single press release that comes out. There's not a single engagement that happens where it is not part of the vision. And it's within those principles of economic diplomacy and where we can document it and write about it and try and spread it around for others to follow. So there's, and what is very, very important is and I've seen this for those who work with me, they have the passion, they have the dedication, and most important, there's an eagerness to learn. I remember when I interview people, and this was on very technical jobs, and some people didn't have the skills, and I would just say, I want one thing sometimes, and that's the spark in their eye, so that I know that they are eager to learn and they will have that ability to move forward. So I think spending time analyzing the data you have, I never come out, and people sometimes, because when I take office, I'm very quiet for around 3 months. And so I had one of the journalists once come and tell me, we know now your style. You spend 3 months where you're analyzing, 3 months where you start, putting things together, and then the 3 months where it's all out. And that's where it comes, do not overpromise, always overshoot. And it's very, very important in public office because you want to stay credible. You want to stay credible because it's through credibility that you're able to mobilize more people and align on vision further and push your agenda.
Under promise, over deliver. Words to live by, for sure. And keep it simple, of course. Everyone should remember. And Frank, this sounded like quite a nice a plug for the value of a liberal arts education. Hire intellectually curious people. Yeah.
Yes.
Great. That's obviously what we promote: critical thinking, and love people who ask lots of questions. I'm going to ask a question before I go back to the queue. I know it's obviously fostering innovation is a policy goal of the ministry, but I'm curious, just on a more personal level, how do you maintain your creative edge?
So, well, there's one thing that I always tell people. I focus on my mandate, do it, and mind my own business. In the sense that if you just look at your mandate, there's so much that can be done. And the only person I always compete with is myself. So there's always this push to come up with something different and so forth. But I think that you know, being surrounded with creative people, you know, engaging with your team who always also has ideas. They also, each one in their portfolio is looking through things in detail. Be receptive to what you hear. All of these, I mean, there's no one thing that pushes you to be creative. It's a drive. It's being receptive to ideas, to people. And the one thing that pushes me always is I want to be able to position Egypt differently, because this country in each and every portfolio is doing so much. And I really want the international stage to rock when we are talking about something related to Egypt. So we did that to some extent when we were in tourism, with the different campaigns and the approach that was very different. And now in international cooperation, the same. It's how do we push the Egypt story? That is really what pushes my drive always.
And do you find that it's a hard sell? I mean, maybe if I just paraphrase another question in the queue that suggests, you know, that there are some ingrained prejudices against the region, and how do you overcome them?
Again, it's there's no story which is perfect, and the pandemic has shown us that reform is a continuous process. We keep on reforming, and the world changes, and you reform more. But it doesn't mean that when there are things going in a certain way, you don't showcase them. And showcasing them is important for more than one reason. It's not just to feel good about it. It's because you want to mobilize resources around doing more good. You know, sometimes you know, it's extremely it's, you know, in psychology of people, right? You want to show appreciation and gratitude and thank people so they can continue moving forward. It's exactly the same with countries. It's exactly the same with policymaking. It's exactly the same with projects. You know, being able to showcase success means that people want to be part of that success. And when people want to be part of that success, whether they are the citizens, the international community, development partners, how would they want to be part of the success if they don't know about it? And today, there are different ways of showcasing it. There are appealing ways to do that. And that's why we are trying to do that through a communication which is simple, but it's also approachable. So it's the intention, setting the intention, we're not trying to showcase the story because we want to you know, go around saying we're the best. We want to showcase a good story because that's the only way to get more and create better stories. Otherwise, we're going to be locked in a certain equilibrium, thinking that everything is very dark, and then we're just stuck there. So we're trying to create, you know, we're trying to remove that dust so that all of us can collate and collaborate and align to create more successes. That's how I see it.
Yeah, success breeds success. And it's fun to be on the winning team.
Yes.
I guess. But one of the questions, I guess, related to that is, how do you balance sort of short-term successes, the need to post some short-term wins against the need to have long-term sustainable wins?
Yeah. Well, the way the question is asked, it assumes that we have been successful in that. So, so that's good. But I think it goes back to an articulated vision. It goes back to clear KPIs that one has, so that each and every step is leading to that final final destination. So, and by the way, it's each and every step is a story on its own and is an end on its own, right? But there shouldn't be any exaggeration, if you will. I mean, if the question, we don't exaggerate short-term, feel good, accomplishments or events or so forth. But it's all a continuum. It's all a continuum, and I sorry that I keep on going back to the vision, but each and everything that takes place, you can you go back, you see that it does exist. So it's not, as you mentioned, it's not overrated. It's just part of that framework. And just being an economist and so forth, I always think about policy frameworks. I think objectives, tools. This tool is used to achieve that objective. And then at the end of the day, this is how we have been able to achieve our targets, because we did these small steps in the middle. So it's, and it's very important to communicate that to internally, to the stakeholders, to everyone involved, and get that alignment, as I mentioned, and set the expectations in the right way.
There's a very sweet question about how to become a minister. It says this particular woman would like to become the Minister of the Environment. But I think, just broadly speaking, what is your advice? Your career clearly wasn't, I mean, it was not a straight line, although not really any setbacks as far as I can see. But what is your advice to some of the younger people on the call and in the audience?
There are certain things that we all want to do since we're young. I don't know. Someone wants to paint. Someone wants to, now go on a spaceship, etc. So there's this one thing that makes you happy, or that makes you feel fulfilled. So I would say try and find that, and invest in yourself to be good at it. So I spent 2 years as a computer science major at AUC, just because my parents wanted me to be a computer scientist, because the AUC was the only university at the time that taught software. So we're supposed to graduate and find a job right away. And I was like, I do not sit down and program unless I have an assignment. So if I am now an employee, how am I supposed to be creative? I don't like to sit on the computer. So it took me and I was the 4.0 GPA, right? So it's not that the competency wasn't there. It's just that my passion wasn't there. So it might take some time for people to find that passion, but once you do find it, invest in learning how to see it fulfill itself in you. Competence is extremely important. Every day is a learning process for everyone, regardless of what position you are in. Cultivate your connections, because they're extremely important. And people like to connect with competent people. So those are two very important things. Be confident in your subject matter. And to be confident in your subject matter means that you continuously have to engage in learning and knowing more. But be confident when you're talking about it, and then be charming. Have a lot of emotional intelligence. I've been in situations where my team is double my age sometimes. I have been in situations where I'm the youngest but most competent in the room, and that creates issues. I've been in situations where I'm the only woman on the table. But each and every circumstance requires certain reactions in different ways. So I would just say that invest in yourself, and don't be intimidated by circumstances. Let your mom pray for you as well. That works.
I would venture to say that you are almost never in situations where you aren't the only woman in the room. In fact, it's probably more common than having more than one woman in the room. Yeah. I would also encourage everyone who's on this, and by the way, you're so popular that actually the numbers of participants is going up and not down, which is great towards the end. Anyone who wants to really be inspired to watch any of the YouTube clips of Dr. Al-Mashat's graduation speeches, where she elaborates on those 4 C's. I found it very inspiring myself. Okay, I'm just going to ask one more question, which is again someone else's, because it's a very good one, and we can finish maybe on that. Which is you have a very busy schedule, but you're also incredibly active on social media. And how important has that been in terms of communicating to the constituency?
You know, so at the very beginning, when the social media started, I was a little bit reluctant because, you know, I thought it had to be official, a ministry social media. And then on the advice of someone very dear to me and my advisor, she was like, no, this is an opportunity because everyone wants to see beyond the minister, and it has to be relatable and so forth. So we started with that, and then, you know, the number of the reaction and the number of comments I get, and how people are engaging, and they understand and comment on the vision sometimes, and they comment sometime on something personal, has been extremely a fundamental part of this journey. So you can do analytical work, you can do serious work, but it's also personal, it's also entertaining, it also provides some I don't want to say guidance, but some inspiration, if you will. And I said this once in a conference, that every time there's a post, it's as if a curtain opens up. You know, I'm on Broadway, and then suddenly there's going to be an audience reaction, and it does happen. And even though I don't know all the people who comment, but they are a serious core part of my team, because you know, they are very engaged, and they give feedback and comments and this and that. So it's been a beautiful and very important part of this journey, and you know, in the Ministry of International Cooperation now, we also launched a website where we want people to also see more of what we're doing in a storytelling way, rather than a very, you know, formal way. So we want people to get more engaged. And remember that 2020 was a year with many different things happening. So to be able to put all of this together and tell Egypt's story, or international cooperation story, in a novel way, a different way, is very rewarding. And there's much more to do. So we look forward to also everyone being engaged with us in trying to see what is it that we're trying to, you know, what we stand for. What we stand for is what's good for serving people through projects with purpose, with the international community hand in hand.
Terrific. Well, for those of you who, if you aren't following the minister on Twitter, I encourage you to do so. It's not all policy. You see quite a human side of her, and also she's been quite fearless in terms of engaging, particularly, I would note, even with Elon Musk.
You know, what can I say? It's just because you know, that was a tweet that was written when I was in Sahel, okay? And suddenly, after that tweet, which was done on a Saturday morning, it was the talk of town, and everyone in Sahel was talking about it. So anyways, that's just for for Sahel and Musk.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time. I'm sure everyone has learned a lot. I certainly have. It's been a real honor to have you here, and to be able to hear your answers to quite a wide range of questions. With that, I'm going to hand it back over to Frank. to conclude.
Thank you very much. This has been fantastic. It's part of the joy I find in serving at AUC to have such phenomenal people all around me every day. Future Rania Mashat's, future Lori Fitch's, and just to wonder how they're going to turn out. And a program like this shows how some of them will turn out. And to be doing this on the eve of Women's Day in particular is wonderful. We're very proud of our people of both genders. But at AUC, we've carved out this niche long before the American Ivy League schools went co-ed, as they talked about then, and admitted women. Dartmouth only did it at my school while I was an undergraduate. In 1928, we graduated our first women student. So we're very proud to see our women go on to lead in business and government, in the arts and entertainment and medicine, in so many different fields. Even in the sciences, we don't have a medical school, but they go on in medical science. So thank you, Dr. Rania. Thank you, Lori, and for doing what you do, both of you for AUC, and in your case, Dr. Rania, for your country. It's been a pleasure having you. Thanks again to the Alumni Affairs team for putting this program together.
If I could just thank Lori for moderating this and for making it both personal as well as professional. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure being invited by the president. Thank you very much. And Lori, thank you so much for this very productive hour. Thank you.
Thank you. Really such an honor. Thanks everyone again for tuning in.